What drives a man to break away from a family legacy and pursue his true calling? We're going to find out today when we hear from Dr. David Lipman on Manlihood.
This is Manlihood, the podcast for men who want to rise up and live with purpose. With your host, Josh Hatcher, this show is here to help you level up as a husband, father, leader, and man, with real conversations and strategies to help you in every area of your life.
Gentlemen, welcome to Manlihood. I hope that 2025 is treating you good, and I hope your 2024 didn't suck too bad. Hey, listen, I hope your holidays went great. I know mine went pretty well. It was great to see the family. And, things were different for us this year. Yeah, this was the first year that my wife and I didn't have everybody at home. We woke up in the morning and it was the first year with nobody else in the house, just us and the dogs. And, I mean, some of the kids came around later. We got to see the kids and the grandkids, but it was different. It was definitely different this year. So those of you who still have kids at home, enjoy it. And don't blink, because it goes like that. I'm telling you. It's fast. So as we're headed into 2025, guys, welcome back to Manlihood, and we're going to dive into this fantastic interview. We've got a great interview lined up for you today with a chiropractor. I had an awesome conversation. We're going to get into it in just a minute, but before we do, I want to encourage you to make sure that you check out Manlihood Plus. We've got some bonus content for you. We've got bonus episodes, some exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else. You can subscribe to it for $4.99 a month at Spotify and at YouTube. So all you got to do is go there and subscribe, and you're going to get bonus content you can't get anywhere else. And it's good. It's going to help you grow, level up as a man, and I really can't wait for you to check it out. Don't skimp on this, guys. This is good stuff. It's better than Disney Plus. It's better than ESPN. It's better than what you're going to get anywhere else. Manlihood Plus. Don't miss out. All right? Seriously, guys. Check it out. Also, if you guys want to get some great gear to help show your love for Manlihood, to tell everybody else what you got going on in your life, go to the Manlihood store. Just go to manlihood.com/store. You've got some books that I've written there that you can get access to. You've also got some great gear. We've got some awesome shirts. The Man the Heck Up shirt with the cool bear skull on it, and the Fight Like Hell shirt with the samurai fighting the tiger, or just some cool shirts with the Manlihood logo. Go there, check it out. You get shirts, hats, jackets, whatever you want. Manlihood.com/store. Guys, today's guest is Dr. David Lipman. He's an experienced chiropractor with over 40 years in helping people live healthier lives. And he's going to talk to us today about taking a holistic approach to health. And, I'm somebody that has used chiropractic care, but most of what I know about it is, oh, my back hurts, let me go get adjusted. There's a whole lot more to this world. And I'm really excited to have the chance to learn from a real chiropractor who can teach me a lot. Dr. Lipman has got a really great insight, but he also talks about really how he discovered his calling and really kind of walked away from a family legacy, which that in itself, there's a lot we can learn about that. So really great conversation with Dr. David Lipman. Stay tuned for this. Make sure you plug into it, and let's see what we can learn from this amazing man today. Dr. Lipman, great to have you on the podcast today. Thanks for joining us, man.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you, Josh.
Yeah, same here. So you're down in Florida, is that right?
Yeah, Boca Raton, it's southeast Florida, maybe 15, 20 minutes from Fort Lauderdale, about 25 minutes from West Palm Beach, maybe an hour from Miami, South Beach. So not a bad place to be.
Awesome. So tell me, Doc, you are a chiropractor, is that right?
Yes, I'm a chiropractic physician, So my practice involves taking care of people from a a musculoskeletal standpoint. I mean, most people access me because they have some kind of pain syndrome, and in my practice, it's not just devoted to spinal stuff. We do full body, any joint in the body, musculature, because the body really is a whole interactive mechanism. And regardless of what somebody comes in with, I'm always sort of addressing like the whole global picture of the body, because there's a few truths that I've learned over the years. First, from my own injuries, and then treating thousands of people. And the fact is that where any of us feel pain is not where it's coming from; it's where it's ending up, which means there are other locations that are causative in terms of those pains, coming out and representing themselves, so to speak. And it's usually not just one other place; it's multiple, because the body functions together and it dysfunctions together, and that's kind of the way I see it. And once I learned that, it made me much more effective at correcting those dysfunctions, because we don't treat pain; we correct the dysfunction that causes pain. If you correct the dysfunction, pains can be gone.
So what was it that made you decide to go into the...
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a great question. Just to kind of start back, I was actually being groomed to go into a family business. It was a multi-generational. It was plumbing manufacturing, started by my great-grandfather, and then my grandfather, and then my father. So I was kind of, like a legacy kind of business from a family standpoint. And when I was 10 years old, we had moved to a new neighborhood, and it was a bit of a challenging environment. So I started exercising, fortunately inspired by a kid next door who was a couple of years older, and his father was into, the martial arts. And he got me to start exercising to make my body strong, and also to eat healthy, to make my body healthy from a nutritional standpoint. So he got me off of Captain Crunch and Pop-Tarts and Wonder Bread, and starting to eat like real food, the food that grows, or the food that we can kill. And I just, that value system was initiated in me, and it kind of continued with me. So the idea of being strong in the body and healthy in the body, because of those two factors, exercise and nutrition, was instilled upon me. When I was 15, I had a motorcycle injury where I had actually broken my neck in two places. And I hid the injury because I was more afraid of my dad, of me being on a motorcycle when I was 15, than what I was feeling. And when I was about 19, it got pretty bad in terms of the pain that was kind of coming on from time to time, and then more consistently by that time. And I met a young chiropractic student, and I didn't even know what a chiropractor was. I never used them. My folks didn't. My friends didn't. And he got me to come into the clinic, and he took x-rays. He showed me that my neck was broken in two places, and he gave me that first adjustment. And I got to tell you something, like in a moment, that pain that I had been dealing with for the past few years was just gone. And at that same moment, something transformative happened in me. Something inside me said, this is your direction. This is what you're supposed to do. And, I couldn't explain it. I didn't know enough about the practice of chiropractic, or really, completely what they did. All I just knew was I just had this first adjustment from this big guy that looked like Clark Kent, and who's going to open up his shirt and there'll be a big S on it. And my pain was gone. And so the toughest thing to do at that point for me was to tell my dad, hey, Dad, I think I want to do something different, and not go into the business. And fortunately, he was so supportive. He was like, what do you want to do? I said, I think I want to be a chiropractor. He says, and you go be a chiropractor, So the other good thing that happened is that same young chiropractic student had, soon after that experience, opened up a practice. And he used to invite me in to kind of follow him around a little bit, so I would able to, learn from what he was doing. And then when I went through school, finished school, he opened up a second office and gave me space to rent. And he continued to kind of mentor me and teach me the business end, because they don't teach you the business end in school. They just teach you how to be a doctor. And so all those pieces kind of fell in place for me to be able to, find myself in a profession, which now, in my 60s and almost 40 years into it, I truly believe this was what my calling was, not, being a legacy plumbing manufacturer.
Yeah, that probably takes quite a bit of courage to kind of go against that family legacy, and just kind of stand up to it. I'm really glad your dad was supportive of your dream in that way, and be able to say, okay, yeah, if this is what you want to do, did that I mean, I guess that could even have cost him, right? I mean, did that have an
So,
impact on the business?
well, no, not really, because I mean, the first thing he says, "Look, I'm not sentimental about the business." Meanwhile, I'm sitting there. I owe it to my father, my grandfather, my great grandfather to be the next one in line. I mean, that's, I was being groomed, and it wasn't that it was being forced on me, but it was more of an opportunity. And yeah, of course, you go into dad's business because he went to his dad's business and his dad's business, and so it was more of the subtlety of me feeling responsible to be part of that, the next generation down, and to have an opportunity to have a very successful business that I would be able to, sort of go into and start to grow into, and who knows where I might have taken it as an example. However, my life's path took me in a different way, and I think because I got that value system at 10 years old about making the body strong and eating healthy, chiropractic really is about removing obstacles and fortifying deficiencies for the body's health. So I think that value system being instilled so young was foundational for me to all of a sudden be brought into that transformative time when my neck pain was gone, as opposed to maybe I wasn't so healthy, maybe I wasn't working out and I wasn't eating healthy, maybe it wouldn't have been as impactful in that way. But I think that was part of it for me to, so like my whole being became part of that, from those foundations early on to then seeing something where this guy with just his hands, he adjusted my neck and that pain was gone. And that just was so transformative. No pills, no surgeries or anything. It was very much along the lines of what my value system had grown into be.
Well, I've actually had a lot of experience with chiropractic over the years. When I was a kid, I had a couple different experiences. Looking back, as I had a lot of when I was a kid, I had issues with my stomach for a while and went
Mm-hmm.
to a whole bunch of doctors. And what I didn't know then that I know now is what it was anxiety, because I was bullied really bad at school. And then a couple years later, I had really bad headaches. Things got better when I went to the chiropractor. And I think it was honestly just because, the chiropractor may have helped the anxiety. I don't know, but it might have just been, just me kind of getting better anyway. I don't know if the chiropractor brought relief or not, but I do know that looking back on it, I know that the reason for the stomach aches and the reason for the headaches was anxiety, because I never told my parents what I was going through as a kid. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Nobody knew that could cause those things then, or at least we didn't talk about those things then. But, I went through all kinds of medical tests, man, like the things I had to go through, back then, to get diagnosed and to, figure out what the problems were. And, then nobody knew what it was. I missed all kinds of school over the whole thing. And but I remember going to the chiropractor, and I mean I was getting relief anyway. I mean I was sixth grade and I was growing, so honestly there was relief. You're growing and you get your back aligned and all that. That was helpful anyway. But over the years I've gone many times to the chiropractor. I started to gain weight because I wasn't healthy. I stayed on the Pop Tarts and the Captain Crunch for a long time. And so you
I
start to gain
understand.
weight, and so I've gone to the chiropractor and get that spine aligned or get your knees kind of put into get some alignment in your knees or your hips, and that's been very helpful over the years. And so a lot of people I think kind of write off chiropractic health, and they don't understand it, or they just kind of look at it almost like, oh, that's ridiculous. But I don't know if they've ever tried it. What do you say to those people that just kind of write it off or don't take it seriously? What do you say to those guys?
Well, that's a really, really great question, and it's going to allow me to answer it, even speaking to your experience. See, chiropractic wasn't developed in the last 100 years. The practice of manipulation had been done centuries ago in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and it wasn't necessarily because of pain. It was to help the body's system of the neurological components of nerve flow and blood flow and movement to enhance the body's healing capabilities. So when chiropractic was sort of named in 1895, it was actually an adjustment that was given to a janitor that helped to restore his hearing. So it had nothing to do with musculoskeletal health. So again, keeping that in mind of how you could be feeling better, whether it's the anxiety symptoms, or, growing pains, because I know you're a taller fellow, and that's something when you're in that growth state, your body's trying to adjust to, being taller and being bigger, and trying to adjust to all that. And so having the mechanical improvements too with chiropractic is absolutely essential, but also on the more organic level, the visceral level, how your organ systems perform better, and, flow is better. When you have poor posture, as an example, your organ systems are not able to function as well because they're getting, mechanical pressure. So posture really is so important from the functionality standpoint, not just the musculoskeletal, but everything else inside you. So the idea of chiropractic being something for back pain really started like in the 70s, when insurance companies started to look at, are we going to cover this as a cost for, healthcare? And the only way they were able to do it is where they were able to see, wow, chiropractic has been shown very effective with low back pain, as an example. So they would give us a bunch of diagnoses and procedures that would enable us to get insurance reimbursement, but it was solely working around that whole musculoskeletal pain syndrome, but nothing to do with the wellness aspect of it, which is really where it came from and what it really is about, even more so. Not that, listen, musculoskeletal, it works great, but there's so much more to it. So I would say to those people, you know what, don't listen to what your medical doc is necessarily telling you, because we're not just, quacks that are, cracking bones here and that. There's a very solid bunch of evidence, body of knowledge that's been growing for 40 years on how effective manipulation of the spine and the rest of the joints are to just overall health as a maintenance thing.
My doctor's actually, I'm trying to remember what the word that he uses, but he actually he's a medical doctor, but then he also...
Is he functional? Is he a functional medicine guy, maybe?
I don't remember the words. I don't remember the word he uses, but he actually does manipulation on top of that as well. But so he actually kind of believes in both at the same time, which is actually super helpful.
He's an osteopath, then, I would imagine.
Osteopath, that's the word. Yeah, which is actually super helpful because then he's kind of got a little bit of both backgrounds, which is, I think it's a helpful way to approach it, from that regard.
Definitely.
And then the chiropractor here in town, which I think you'll appreciate, his name is Dr. Bender, which I think is a great name for a chiropractor.
There's a Dr. Backman here in town, too.
Dr. Backman?
Yeah.
Oh, that is a great name for a chiropractor. So,
yeah.
When I was a kid, the chiropractor ordered a bunch of pens that were like bent. And that was his calling card, was the bent pens.
They called on all of us, that company, and had bent spines, and that were our pens too. So we give them out, of course, keychains and all that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about men's health issues in particular. What are some things that chiropractors maybe could be offering to help men? Is there some men specific issues that men deal with that chiropractors can help with?
Yeah. So one of the things that, as a chiropractor, we have a broader look at health in general. And again, it's always about seeing what obstacles in an individual are presented that's stopping his body from functioning more optimally. There's usually two things. There's toxins in the environment. Toxins meaning that not only just air pollution, water pollution, but even in the foods that we're eating, pesticides, fertilizers, those things are getting into us. And, they're finding that for the first time really in history, young men, 20s, 30s, are finding that their testosterone levels are very low. Now, that's not a natural occurrence, especially, because it should be peaking at 19. And 2 years later, at 21, it shouldn't be all of a sudden diminished dramatically. And a lot of that is because of the things that are our environment that are causing loss of testosterone or estrogenizing things like plastics. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, we didn't have water bottles. We drank from the water fountain, or with the sink at our house, the faucet, or we drank from the hose in the backyard when we were kids. And that's, we got our water, but we weren't walking around with all these plastic bottles. So they found that there's a lot of these petroleum chemicals in plastics that are getting and off-gassing into the water. So drinking bottled water from plastic has shown to be one of the ways that testosterone has been reduced in men. So as a chiropractor, looking more holistically at what's going on, as opposed to saying, okay, well, we got to start giving hormone replacement therapy to a 21-year-old, as opposed to let's look, what's happening, why is this happening, and then educating people about, what, you got to get rid of the plastic, you got to go back to glass, or you got to get stainless steel, so you can avoid those contaminants. And, as an example, in the home too, having plastic cups to drink out of have no place in society now because of those types of things. And they specifically do, hurt males in that same way. So becoming more familiar with how the modern world is sort of warring against us men is causing those things to be brought to the surface when you really take a critical look at, like, why are these things happening? Why are men not physically as, let's say, strong and more vital as men? So that's the one piece of it. Now, I mean, I have a theory about some other parts of it, and I think, if you look historically at men and how we grew up, before 100 years ago, most kids, boys, spent the day with their dads, like on farms, learning how to navigate the world around them, learning how to work, learning the manual labor of what men mostly did for centuries. That wasn't just a moment in time. That's how we lived for so long. And then I think what happened in like early part of the 20th century, when factories started to, come up and guys started to move into the city and work there, that connection to dad and learning from dad what a man's about, how do you problem solve, all that stuff was starting to diminish. And as you know, most teachers for us when we're younger are women. There's very few male teachers, being that male influence, to us young kids. So it's female. And, look at World War II, when a lot of these 18 to 24-year-old guys went knowing they wouldn't come back. And those that did, they had shell shock, they had PTSD, and maybe they weren't available in the same way to their children too, because they had this part of their lives that they couldn't even share. And then, of course, in the 70s, you got the women's lib movement, and sort of also was, increasing women's, rights for good reason. However, what it ended up doing a couple of decades later in the 90s is like, maleness is toxic. Males need to be more sensitive. We need to cry more. And so between what's happening in our environment and some of the social and cultural things that have happened over the last century, I think it's had a very big impact on men, young men and old men. And, even look at the kids today, trying to get them into the military, they can't even get to basic training because they've been sitting there playing video games, and, they no longer have gym class as a mandatory for graduation. It sure was when I was a kid. And so culturally and societally, and then, with toxins in the environment, there's been, unfortunately, attack on manhood from, all those aspects, biochemically, culturally, socially. And so as a chiropractor, I can come across with the idea of, listen, you have to start minimizing your exposures to some of these toxins that are affecting the way your body's functioning as a man, and start to take proactive steps to make sure that you find out where you can minimize that exposure and find out what deficiencies you might be having, let's say nutritionally, because again, we don't have the same soil content of nutrients that we did 50 years ago because of, over farming and, not to mention the toxins too. So you really have to start to think about being your own doctor and learn what your body's needs are, and then use some of these resources out there to help understand where you're at and to take action steps to do that. And listen, just for a man to start getting himself healthy, that's automatically going to help that manly part or that masculine part in terms of, how we as, XY chromosomes function. And so that's where I try to, counsel my clients, because again, this is a new phenomenon that younger guys are getting low testosterone. And the answer is definitely not to start getting hormone replacement. Like I said, it's about understanding what steps can they do and start, warring against the war on them. Modern world is warring on us, so we have to be soldiers and fight back.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm actually taking TRT right now.
Mm-hmm.
I met with an endocrinologist who said, look, because you're overweight, she said, if you take it for too long and too much, for a long period of time, it can stop your body's ability to
Own
make it on its
production.
own.
Yeah.
But being overweight can reduce your body's ability to make it as well. She said, and so you're caught in a loop where she said, I want to help you use this as a bridge to get to where your body starts making it again. So she's like, we're going to get you to that place. We're going to scale it back. And I said, okay. She's, so it makes me a little nervous, but I'm using that as that temporary bridge, and I'm trusting her, but I'm a little nervous. You know what I mean? So I totally get that concept. And so far it's helping. It's, I can see a difference. But yeah, but I'm also 46, right? So I'm also at that place where it's kind of normal for it to start to drop a little bit.
Right.
And I'm having some of those issues where, and I'm losing weight. So we're getting, I've lost 80 pounds, 80 plus pounds.
Congratulations. That's wonderful.
So it's helping, and I'm seeing, we should be starting to get to that place where stuff is moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I get the concept, and we'll do what we got to do. I don't want to be, injecting myself every 2 weeks for the rest of my life, so I don't want to be doing that. We want to make this happen, get the body producing it the way it's supposed to be producing it. But these guys that are 21 years old, and the statistics and the numbers on that, dude, like it's a epidemic, or I don't know if it's a pandemic, because I don't know if it's the whole world is having this problem, but I do know that here in the States, it is ridiculous, the percentage of men who are having low testosterone younger than they did 20, 40, 100 years ago. It's
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah. And again, the other aspect is, physical exertion does stimulate, testosterone and growth hormone and all of those, good things for us. And, it's only since probably the 90s when, the workforce went so much from manual labor to, this very sedentary kind of existence. And, that's why a few years ago they came out with that report that said sitting's the new smoking, because they realized the impact on sitting, of sitting on the body in terms of circulation and, lymphatic drainage, removing toxins. So while we're getting more toxins thrown into our body from our environment, where our lifestyles are starting to work against that further, because we're not even stimulating that detox process. So, it becomes something that you have to really get a handle on for your own personal life. I mean, all of us, me and myself included, that you have to just understand what you're up against and do the best you can to try to minimize those exposures. But at the same time, losing, extra body weight that you don't need, and making yourself strong by stressing your body every day in some way to force it to adapt to that stress, because we have these amazing mechanisms physiologically built into us that help us to adapt to stress in a very positive way. So the more convenient and sedentary our lives have gotten, it's really hurt our health on so many levels, and physical, mental, spiritual, even I'll go and say, because we were made to move, and movement really kind of powers our whole system to be at its very best. So we have to, since we're so quick to adopt technology and, be sedentary, and how a kid can just spend, 12 hours playing video games, instead of going out there and playing sports or exercising, the detriment to the body is just, horrendous, like you said, and the numbers don't lie. So between all of those factors, the sedentary living and all the chemical exposures that we're having that are harming us, really comes down to the time we have to understand what this is, and we have to, take a stand against it. We got to choose a side. It's either going to be our bodies or, living in culture as is.
I agree, man. Like I said, I wish that I would have made different choices in the past 20 years, and I'm paying for it now, and I'm working hard to change it. So, because I'd like the next 20 years to look different for me. So,
and they will. If you're committed to that, Josh, I can promise you that. I've seen it not just with myself, but with so many people too. If you can flip that switch and you dedicate yourself, invest in the inclination of your health instead of just trying to manage the decline.
Yeah. Well, I'm already seeing a difference, man. I'm telling you, which is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, like I said, I know that we think a lot about chiropractic being, Dr. Crackham, right?
Yeah, YouTube doesn't help with that.
Right. So is that, would you say that is could that be the majority of the work that you do, or would you say that's just a portion of the work that you do?
Yeah, so that's evolved from the time, in the 1980s when I got out of school. The adjustment was probably the main component of the treatment. We did have things like electric stim or hot packs or ice or ultrasound that we would use in a case of trying to reduce muscle spasm and inflammation at the site of where the pain was. And then the adjustment would be sort of the third and final thing to do. And there's even some chiropractors out there that all they do is adjustments. 3 minutes and you're out the door. They're seeing, 60, 80, 100 people a day, just like a big, assembly line. And again, I'm not putting it down. But for me, the way my mindset and practice has evolved, I've started to incorporate other things that help to really make more of a impactful change. I call it re-engineering somebody, where those restrictions and the lack of proper balance from a weight bearing and a mobility standpoint are really causing not only, again, the pain, but as I said before, without that proper nerve flow and blood flow, a lot of other symptoms can show up. I mean, quick example, we've had people that have had digestive issues. Some guys, let's say that, they're either, they can't, they don't go often enough, or they're going too often. And sometimes that's because the nerve flow to those areas and those organ systems are locked up because they're sitting at a job all day, and that, creates congestion there, and they're not getting that normal, GI motility and the way it's supposed to be. So just adjusting those areas can help, but sometimes it takes a lot more, because when you sit, the hip flexor muscles that are attached to the front of your spine that, bring your leg up towards your spine, when they get tight, they can cut off a lot of circulation in that area. So part of what I'm doing now is to try to unwind all that myofascial tension throughout the body and then do the adjustment at the end. But it's much more layered to unwinding all that, and different tools I use to do it in an optimal way so we can get really good results much faster than just doing an adjustment.
What are some things that the guys that are listening when they're at home can do daily? I know this isn't job security for you, right? But what are some things that I can do daily to not have to call you?
Yes. So again, we're looking at, our structures and the mobility of our structures, because unless we're really moving on a regular basis as part of our daily tasks, we have to create that, and not in an artificial way, but we have to include it somehow. As an example, I'm fortunately on my feet, 95% of the time for my daily activities. I'm bending over, picking people up off my table. I'm maneuvering their bodies. And so I am moving and bending and twisting, but I still go to the gym, first thing in the morning, 5 a.m., to make sure my body is going to be as mobile and resilient and strong to what my daily tasks would be. And even if I was sitting at a desk all day, I would be devoting a lot of time to making sure that I unwind that tension that builds up each day because of my daily activities, and making sure that that's included, so that sedentary task doesn't get the better of me. So I would really encourage any man to really make sure that they start their day, if that's the best for them. I love starting my day with exercise because physiologically it does so much more for your brain, your mindset, your joints, your circulation. And certainly if you're going to be at a desk for 6-8 hours, you have to find time to get up in between. Maybe if you're in a situation where you can actually take a walk, I would even say, like, do walking lunges, exaggerate it a little bit and do it several times a day, just so that tension doesn't build so much where you're starting to affect, your cardiovascular system, your circulatory system, your digestive system. All of those things are very impactful just from being sedentary. So if you can make it a point to have a schedule of movement throughout your day to break up those sedentary processes of just being at a desk. The second thing is, a lot of my patients have gotten the stand-up desk or the variable desk, where they can stand some of the time. So that breaks up some of that compressive stuff instead of just sitting that whole time. Now they're standing. And of course, while you're standing, you could also be kind of static and not moving at all. But I encourage them to try to even sway a little bit, to shift their weight back and forth, just to facilitate a little bit of movement and circulation while they're standing, so it doesn't become static in that sense. But it absolutely has to be a focus for everybody in that situation, but not just because of the sitting. Like I said, I'm moving all day, but I still need to stimulate my body, because what I've learned is we're either growing or we're degenerating. There is no third direction. And I've been dedicated to making sure that I'm going to be growing and ascending in my health status, so to speak, in my strength, instead of just succumbing and saying, well, after 40, it's all downhill. I refuse to do that.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's good stuff. So what are the things that, we've talked a lot about the obviously the physical part that the man needs to work on. I think a lot of guys, they get hung up, on the spiritual and the mental and the emotional side of things. What do you think about what was a guy, what do you think needs to happen in that regard? I mean, I ask that because I know, like, as a chiropractor, you talk about being, treating the whole guy, right? What do you think needs to happen there?
Well, for me, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm preaching in any way, but one of the things that I've really come to appreciate about the body itself is how incredibly magnificent it is in all of its functionings. And, even though I might have grown up thinking that, evolution, we were once this and we became this and became this, I'm certain that the person or the being that created this is absolutely so far beyond what any human can be. And so for me, I've really given up to understand that, there is a God. He created us with this magnificence in how we function. And he's also very much involved in what our lives are. He cares about that. So for me, I also share that part of me with patients, because a lot of people feel victimized by their situation, and they don't have that vitality. And if somebody's in pain, it's hard to really be a good father or be a good husband or a good friend, because you're just not functioning at your top end. So I really try to show people an optimism that pain is not a lifestyle, and you're not supposed to feel this way. And part of what you're feeling, sort of as a deficit or depressed, is because your body's just not functioning properly. Because the biochemistry of fitness or being fit is very different from the biochemistry of sedentary living and not moving. And sometimes the mental aspect of things really is because of the difference between those two biochemistries. Doing things that actually stimulate you physically and physiologically can actually help the mental very much so. It has a lot to do with the kind of neurotransmitters, like everybody knows what endorphins are. Those are the feel-good hormones that any kind of exertions will cause for us. So to include things in your life, sometimes like cold plunging as an example, is a great way to stimulate a lot of those things physiologically that are going to make you feel better. And the discipline of being able to sit in cold water for 5 or 6 minutes with deep breathing also can give you a discipline that you can carry into, your work life, your family life, your ability to see challenges and not consider them so overwhelming, but you feel more and more confident that you're able to, meet these things. So, being disciplined as a man in all aspects has a lot to do with, how we're going to function, the success that we will have in our jobs or, again, in our families. And, there's also something very much to be said about the community of men. Men really can, help foster each other in terms of, building each other up. We all need to have friends. We were made for community. We're communal type beings. But men themselves really need to be with other men in terms of, having conversations, sharing some of the things and challenges, because you can gain a lot of strength from a community of men around you that, everybody's facing a lot of the same stuff. We don't tend to talk about it as much. But I think men, in a group of men that meet on a regular basis or talk about those things are really important. And many times I get to do that as a chiropractor here with patients, because patients will open up to me. They'll, sometimes I might be the only person they're telling something to. And so I take that, very seriously. And not that I have all the answers, but sometimes just knowing that they can talk to me here, even if I don't have the answer, is of great help to them, because they can get something off their chest, let's say. So I think men should really find, if you don't have one really good friend, maybe some friends too, to just be willing to open up to and help mentor each other and share things with each other, and even be a walking group. Why can't a bunch of guys go walking at 5 a.m. as a group, share the exercise part and have a conversation? And I guarantee if that starts to happen, you're not going to miss that group, because you're going to really enjoy what that evolves into, personally, emotionally, spiritually, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, man. I think that's important. I've got a group of guys I meet with every other week, and couldn't live without it. We meet and we talk about, it's a church thing. So we meet, talk about the Bible, pray. Sometimes we eat, we goof off, tell jokes. But that community is vital. I couldn't get by without it, And when we need each other, we're there. If I needed something, they'd be right there in a heartbeat, And I think it's something that we all need in our life, is that connection, that community. And whether it's a church thing or not, I think that's something that we've got to have that. And if you don't have that, it's time to start making the kind of friends to get there, And if you don't, a lot of people kind of get weirded out when you say make friends, because well, I've always tried and nobody's there for me. Start being there for somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because if you don't, if you got to invest to get it back,
Yes. And I'll say this too, because I've talked to some of my patients that aren't necessarily, God believers, Christ believers. And I say, something, the one thing that's really cool about a men's Bible study is that it's really bringing a sense of really what morality and good and evil and right and wrong is. And regardless of your belief system, there's absolutely no downside to sitting around with a bunch of guys and hearing, principles of, effective spiritual living as we were made to. And even if you don't believe that, there's nothing that you're going to hear that's going to, turn you off or be like a negative waste of time, because many people that have started these studies that I've spoken to, gotten involved in them, have actually soon become believers, and their lives have never been better. And it just took to be in that group of men that had a lot of their, same, deficits, I'll call it, whether it's emotionally or physically, or things that they were challenged with in terms of their lives. And just having that group there, and with, the Word of God, that's kind of the foundation of that. I've never had anybody like do that and walk away saying, oh, that was a waste of time.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing with that. Like, I'm going to say probably 80% or more of those like men's Bible groups out there, right, are going to probably 90% of them are going to welcome you in if you would consider yourself a non-believer. Probably 90% of them are going to say, yeah, come on in, join us. I don't care if you ever change your mind, you're welcome to join us. And they're not going to constantly argue with you, right?
Right.
You could say, I don't agree with anything you're saying, I just want to hang out with you. And they're not going to constantly argue with you, know? And they're fine with you disagreeing with them, just hang out with them. You're welcome. Like, you're going to have the 10% that are going to be annoying. Those ones aren't the ones for you. Don't go to those ones. If you don't feel welcome there, don't go to those ones.
Right.
Hang out with the ones that welcome you in, and just hang out. And the studies on that are actually really interesting because they've already done studies. You could, if you go and you're a part of a community like that, a part of a faith community, even if you don't believe it, even if you like are opposed to it, but you are still a part of it, like your life, you're happier, your marriage is better. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
your family is better. Like it's, you don't even have to agree with it or believe it, but you're statistically better off. So,
right. And if for no other reason, right?
right. So just it's worth it. You just go and, you don't even have to agree with it. Just check it out. Like, and if it's real and if you start to believe it, great. If nothing else, you get some, mediocre coffee once a week and,
Right.
and you make some friends that actually care about you,
Right. And I think what people don't realize is, we're held, we as believers, we're held to a higher standard. And I think that's where some of the cultural things where somebody says, people aren't there for me, my friends are only friends when things are going well, that kind of thing. We don't have that as believers because we're held to a much higher standard for ourselves because, we have, eternity, inside of us. And, we're not just here, in life and we die and that's it. We know that there's something more. And so I think that helps. And for me personally, when I really came to understand that, I think I really got much more solid on the fact that God made me a man. I have certain responsibilities and duties based on the way I'm created as a man. And, I have to be more of that leader in my household, whether it be to my wife or to my children, to set examples. And once I really understood that, it really changed a lot of the dynamics that were in our family as a whole. Not that things were terrible, they weren't in any way. But as that got in me, it filtered down to, the rest of my family. And it's a great way to kind of represent to the world other possibilities, because the world's just gotten darker and darker every day, and so many people are just so much in despair. And they're getting their truth from the newscasters, and that's their truth. But I try to let people know that there's something so way beyond us and what we're thinking, and there's a plan for it all. And if you can get to know what that is, I guarantee your life's going to be so much better.
Yeah, there's a hope to it, man. There's a hope and there's a purpose. And
yep, a hope and a future.
Yeah, that's my experience.
That's great. That's great to share that with you.
So, Doc, I hope it doesn't offend you if I call you. Every time I have a doctor on the show, I just call them Doc. So,
yeah, I mean, people called me by my first name. Just to be honest, I mean, David was a king, a warrior. He was a musician, a poet, and man after God's heart. I'll take David over Doc any day.
Okay. All right, David. I like to ask all my guests a couple of questions because I love to get all the different perspectives. So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what does it take to be a man?
Yeah, well, again, I'm defining what that is based on my innate belief system of what God says I am. As a man, God, commands us to be certain ways. And, I didn't understand that until I knew more and more. Now, listen, that being said, growing up, my dad was a man's man. He was extremely intelligent. He was athletic. He was a great father in that he made it a point to make an individual relationship with me and each of my two sisters. And he was completely present when he was with any of us. And when he became a grandfather, my kids and my sister's kids, he took each one of them separately and he made it a point to get to know who they were and bring out activities, for them that would answer. He didn't do what he wanted to do with them. He did what they were interested in. So, as a man, understanding the world around you and the people around you, how you could really get to know them and how you can be a better father, a better wife, a better friend, is something that I think men are supposed to do, because we have emotions, but we can't let our emotions be the things that guide us. We need our intellect. God gave us a brain and a heart. And I think, and I'm grateful that for the most part, I could feel a certain way, but I could also think differently than that. And I think being a man means that you have to let your intellect guide your decisions more, not your emotions, because that is not, I think, what we're called to do. But it also is, the whole concept of following your heart. And as you know, as a believer, that the heart is wicked, and we shouldn't be following the heart. We should be directing ourselves based on the brain that God gave us and our ability to reason. There's a big difference between a wise man and a fool in the Bible too, and it's laid out very specifically in many, many chapters of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. So I think those standards for being a man have a lot to do with how we conduct ourselves, our disciplines, our charity. We're called to help, widows and orphans and those things. And all of those principles for me are truly the principles that I think is what really make a man what a man should be and is. That's my thought.
Excellent. Thank you, man. David, if you could get your hands on a DeLorean with a flux capacitor and travel back in time and visit 10-year-old David, what do you want to tell him?
Well, I would say that I want you to listen to that voice inside you that might sound different than what you're hearing from the outside. And if that voice is telling you something that goes against those outside forces, but your gut instinct is that this is a truth. This is something that's real. This is part of you. This is who I made you to be and why you're here. I would say to absolutely follow that voice. Now, fortunately, I ended up doing that, but I also had many times in my life when I didn't follow that voice and things didn't work out so well. So I would definitely tell him to stay the course despite the obstacles that you think might be in front of you, because there's a purpose for your life, and if you listen carefully enough, you're gonna be able to know that purpose and have faith that even though you don't know all the answers and all the directions, that it's going to be made manifest to you. Just believe it.
Awesome. All right, and my last question for you, man, is what is your best advice for the men that are listening today?
I would say that you have to become your own self-care expert. You have to find out what do you need to do to, again, promote your own health at your physical level, no matter where you're starting from. There's enough information out there, and I often, counsel and coach people to be able to take the starting steps to starting moving to that right direction. And sometimes there's many layers to them, but I think that we as men need to take responsibility for the bodies that we're walking around in. That means we can't rely on just a medical doctor to tell us what it is. We have to become our own medical doctors, functional doctors, and self-care experts for us. Because, Josh, you're the one that's walking around in that body every day. Even if I was your chiropractor, I could only do so much to help you. What you do every day is going to have the greatest impact on you, just like what I do every day to have the greatest impact on me. And being in my 60s and feeling as great as I do shows me that is absolutely the way it is, because I told you, I broke my neck. That still happened. I've had other injuries and things, but I'm still pain-free, functional, strong, and energetic in my 60s, even though I was told after 40 it's all downhill. And so I would say flip that switch in your head, guys. Get that mindset where you are going to start making yourself strong and healthy, regardless of what change that's going to take in your lifestyle. I guarantee you, you'll never regret it. I get up sometimes 4:30 in the morning, and I do my superhuman protocol. I'll go to the gym, and sometimes, honestly, I got to drag myself to that. But I've never left a workout saying I should have stayed home sleeping, and that motivates me every single day because I feel great.
Awesome. David, let's say our guests want to connect with you and your protocols and the work that you've been doing. What's the best way for that to happen?
I think the easiest thing is probably to either go to my website, which is physicalevidencechiropractic.com. We have a connect, ask.
Hey, Doc, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on Manlihood. I appreciate you. I appreciate your story. I appreciate you sharing your insights with us. Guys, if you are liking what you hear, if you want to know more, make sure you go check out Dr. Lipman's website. And again, as always, guys, make sure that you check out the Manlihood store, get some Manlihood gear. And if you want to connect with some other guys, join our private Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave, where you can connect with other guys. We've got some good stuff going on there. There's some great conversations to help you level up as a man. You can make some friends. Connect with some guys that really care about you and want to build you up. We don't trash talk there. We don't put each other down. It's about helping each other grow. And I'm really impressed with the level of men in that community. Really, we don't have a whole lot of rules there. And the goal is don't make me make rules. A lot of places, some of the guys can be pretty insulting and pretty harsh on each other. And what we've got here is a place where we really are genuinely interested in helping each other out, and yes, you're going to get a variety of perspectives, but it's guys who want to see guys level up, and we're interested in building each other up. And so somebody might give you an answer you don't like, but their goal isn't to tear you down. So that's what we've got going on in our free private Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave. Go check it out. But guys, I just want you to know I really appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. Make sure you share this with somebody. Leave us a rating or a review if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like this episode, subscribe so you get notified the next time we've got another episode coming. and share it, like I said, with somebody that you want to share the episode with. If you see the short form videos that get posted, make sure you like those and that you comment on them, and let's spread the word about what we're doing here at Manlihood. Guys, I love you. I care about you, and I'm proud of you. I'll see you next time.
Dr. Dave button on there, and you could just fill out a form, give me your information, write a little summary of what it is that you're asking for. I'll get that, and I can reach directly out to you. You could also follow us on Instagram at Boca Raton Chiropractor, and that's also our TikTok channel. So we also have a lot of the content and a lot of the things that are sort of out of the box and more cutting edge that we show you out there, so you can get a sense of some of the things of what you can start to do to embrace, some habits you can start to incorporate into your life to really get your body to function at a much higher level.
Awesome. Man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today on Manlihood. I really appreciate you. Maybe we'll have you again sometime on, and we'll chat with you again in the future.
Yeah, let's do it. Do it, Josh. Let's just do it.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome, David. Thank you very much. Hey, listen, so there was one thing that you said earlier that I'd like to see if I could have you say again. You had a little mix up, and I noticed it, and if I could have you say it again, I can edit it in and nobody will even notice. You said a better father, a better wife, a better friend, and I think you meant to say a better father, a better husband, a better friend. And if I could have you just say that, I'll edit it and nobody will even notice. So if you could just say a better husband, or you said a better father, a better husband, a better friend. So if you could just
say husband first. It should be in that order.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
To be a better husband, a better father, and a better friend.
Okay, awesome. I can snip that in and nobody will even notice it.
Right.
Awesome. I knew exactly what you meant when you said it, and I'm like,
yeah.
That's going to make a great clip, and I didn't want to.
Right, you didn't want to make it go the other way or discard it altogether.
Right, exactly.
Thanks I think for catching that.
Yeah, I think I can snip it in there and nobody will even notice it. So
wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Hey, Doc, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here on Manlihood. I appreciate you. I appreciate your story. I appreciate you sharing your insights with us. Guys, if you are liking what you hear, if you want to know more, make sure you go check out Dr. Lipman's website. And again, as always, guys, make sure that you check out the Manlihood store, get some Manlihood gear. And if you want to connect with some other guys, join our private Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave, where you can connect with other guys. We've got some good stuff going on there. There's some great conversations to help you level up as a man. You can make some friends. Connect with some guys that really care about you and want to build you up. We don't trash talk there. We don't put each other down. It's about helping each other grow. And I'm really impressed with the level of men in that community. Really, we don't have a whole lot of rules there. And the goal is don't make me make rules. A lot of places, some of the guys can be pretty insulting and pretty harsh on each other. And what we've got here is a place where we really are genuinely interested in helping each other out, and yes, you're going to get a variety of perspectives, but it's guys who want to see guys level up, and we're interested in building each other up. And so somebody might give you an answer you don't like, but their goal isn't to tear you down. So that's what we've got going on in our free private Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave. Go check it out. But guys, I just wanted you to know I really appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. Make sure you share this with somebody. Leave us a rating or a review if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like this episode, subscribe so you get notified the next time we've got another episode coming, and share it, like I said, with somebody that you want to share the episode with. If you see the short form videos that get posted, make sure you like those and that you comment on them, and let's spread the word about what we're doing here at Manlihood. Guys, I love you. I care about you, and I'm proud of you. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for being part of Manlihood. Now it's time for you to rise up and take action. Join the Manlihood Man Cave, our free Facebook group, and connect with the other men on the same journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share that episode with a friend. For more, visit manlihood.com.